Okay, so British universities seem to be carrying themselves safe places these days, where one is expected not to evince any opinion that might upset anyone on campus. A, what do you think about it? And B, do you feel there's anything we can usefully do to expose young people to ideas they don't have already?
What on earth is a university for, other than to be challenged and to be made to think and made to argue, and if necessary, made to face up to things that you find distasteful? I am actually appalled by this tendency to infantilism that is infecting not just our universities, but those in America as well. A rash of cases where people have been invited by student societies to go and speak, and have then been disinvited at the behest of the student union, on the grounds that what they say might upset some of the students or offend some of the students. Well, if you're offended or upset, tough. That's what you come to university for. May I quote Stephen Fry? Stephen Fry said, "You're offended? Well, so fucking what?"
It does seem incredible. Could I just ask, are you speaking from a position of somebody inside a university?
No, I just pay for them.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I think that certainly many of us inside universities, or many of us academics inside universities, feel very strongly attached to our academic freedom. I think it is one of the rights that we will fight for.
Lectures, not just invited speakers, lectures now being censored because they might offend someone.
Yes, you have to issue a trigger warning. Have you ever issued a trigger warning, Alice?
No, I haven't issued a trigger warning. I don't let anybody know what I'm going to be talking about beforehand.
Yeah.
And say the next question, please.
Is this on? Oh, yeah. First of all, I just wanted to say your tie is absolutely gorgeous. And my question was, do you think that epigenetic inheritance could give rise to what we could call a form of Lamarckian evolution?
Here's where Alice and I are going to have a mutual tutorial, because I'm going to learn from her. As far as I am aware, epigenetics is all about embryology. The embryo starts as a single fertilized egg, a single cell, and as it develops, the different cell types differentiate, and so liver cells are different from kidney cells, different from muscle cells, different from bone cells, etc., because different genes are turned on in these different tissues, and that's epigenetics. Now, lately, the word epigenetics has come to be used for a particular example of genes being turned on, and then the turning on being in some mysterious way inherited by the next generation. That may happen, and that's why you've asked the question, because that looks like a kind of Lamarckism. It's unfortunate that the word epigenetics has been usurped for that particular kind of inheritance. But given that it has, what you want to know, if it was to become the basis for a form of Lamarckian inheritance, is does it go on for many generations, or does it die away? And as far as I know, it dies away, if not in the next generation, in the next but one generation, if it happens at all. So that rules it out as a vehicle for evolution in the same way as mutation is a vehicle for evolution. It also, no, I think I've probably said enough. It might be interesting, the phenomena might be there, but if they are, we've got a very long way to go before we use this as an example of possible Lamarckian evolution. As far as I can tell, it is not that. And I think the word is being misused anyway.
I think it adds another layer of complexity, which is very interesting. What we're basically talking about is not changes to the genetic code itself, but changes to the proteins that attach to it, and in fact not even changes to the proteins, but subtle modifications to them. which will then affect actually how the DNA
exactly
is
as happens in
exposed.
embryology anyway.
Absolutely,
Yes.
absolutely. That, you know, the whole key to making a body with lots of different cells, you know, having nerve cells and liver cells and pancreatic cells and all of those sort of things. Every single one of your cells has the same DNA. How do you do that then? Why aren't they all the same? Why aren't they all just clones of each other doing exactly the same thing? You have to be able to turn particular genes on and off. And this is what epigenetics is. So it's modification of those histone proteins, which when I was at medical school, we didn't learn this. It was out there in the published literature. But as far as I was concerned, histones were just packaging. And so it's got a lot more interesting. And obviously it's out there and people know about it out in the public domain as well. So that is the major ramifications of epigenetics, that, you know, we're now understanding how you get differentiation in the embryo of all these different cells. There does seem to be an effect which spans generations. There are some studies, some longitudinal studies in humans which suggest it. It hasn't been proven in humans yet. We don't know whether the process by which the gametes are made, the eggs and the sperm, actually involves stripping all of those epigenetic modifications so that you start from scratch. And that may be the case. It may be that in some simpler animals, the modifications stick around for maybe a few generations, but that in humans they don't. We still don't really know, but there is the possibility for them to slightly change the game a little bit. But it doesn't change the fact that the fundamental process is still going to be natural selection.
Very good example of mutual tutorial. Thank you very much.
Where's the next? Oh, there's a gentleman there, and you just pass the microphone to him.
One of the very best things I've seen on YouTube is the hilarious love letters to Richard Dawkins.
Oh, it's just brilliant.
Fabulous, and the way the cameraman cracks up is wonderful. I was just going to ask if you are thinking of filming another instalment soon.
First of all, Richard, can you explain what they are?
Yes. A few years ago, I filmed. Somebody filmed me reading the hate mail that I get. I think I was probably dressed in a dressing gown and with my feet in slippers before a log fire. I don't think I was smoking a pipe. In fact, I know I wasn't. But I think I had a cat on my lap. It was that sort of thing, and reading out these extraordinarily obscene, vitriolic. I hope you get painful cancer and die a painful death. I hope you get run over by a church van. And then, by popular request, I did another lot, but about 3 years later. My original plan for that was suggested to me by a young woman who was a student of making films, and she had a plan to film me doing it, this time not by a fire, but this time with a beautiful young woman cellist playing beautiful, sweet music while I read these awful hate mail. Unfortunately, that never got edited, and so the second one was in fact done in front of a fish tank with the fish swimming peacefully around. There's been another one that I received quite recently, which didn't get into either of those two performances, but I really rather like. It's, "I hope you lose your watch and are late for an important appointment."
Are you going to publish a book of them all?
Actually, that's not a bad idea.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Right, another question from somewhere over here. There's a lady right at the back there. I'm going to make you run, Martin. Right up to the back. The lady in the orange top. It looks orange from here. Apologies if it's not.
So maybe a question of science fiction or evolutionary biology, I'm not sure, but do you ever speculate about what adaptation might come next for humans and what that might look like? Or would you not enter into that?
Well, if we're talking about biological evolution in the future of humans, remember that this can only come about through differential reproduction. Some types of humans would have to be either survive better or be more likely to reproduce than others. So if you think about the kind of thing it might be, if you think about, say, what's happened in the past 2 million years or 3 million years, one of the more dramatic things that's happened to us over that period is that our brains have got bigger, dramatically bigger, much, much bigger. And so you might well think, well, is that going to continue? Will we in the future have brains like the Mekong with huge... and to repeat, in order for that to happen, it would be necessary that consistently over a large number of generations, over perhaps 1 million years, the brainiest individuals have the most children. Which must in some sense have been true over the past 3 million years, because otherwise our brains wouldn't have got bigger.
They've got slightly smaller since the Paleolithic, though.
Have they?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, another mutant.
We're on a
story,
downward
thank
trend
you.
now,
Yes,
everybody.
yeah.
That's...
Yes, well, I believe it.
So I often get asked this question, and I refuse to answer it, but I say I'll make some predictions about what won't happen. Because our bodies are really tightly constrained, our development is really tightly constrained, and there are some things which happen very early on during embryological development that if you were to flip them or change them, you would just derail the whole of the process, and there's absolutely no way it would work. So I will make a prediction that humans are never going to grow another pair of arms, that humans are never going to grow extra fingers. I don't think that's going to happen. You're never going to have eyes in the back of your head. All of these things which would be really difficult, actually, to work out biologically how to do that without derailing development.
That's very interesting, and it's a point we often forget. When we're thinking about adaptation, we think only about what is good for, sort of out there in the world, and forget that every single change has to come about by a change in embryology. And there may well be things which embryology just doesn't allow. It's too difficult to do. Yeah, it's a very interesting point.
Gentleman in the middle of this block over here.
Have you paid any attention to physicist Lee Smolin's comments on the evolution of the laws of physics?
Yes, this is an interesting idea. Quite a lot of physicists favour, for reasons of quantum theory, the idea of a multiverse, the idea that the universe that we know, the universe in which we find ourselves, is not the only one, that there is a population of universes. And it's part of the idea is that these different universes in the multiverse have different laws of physics. And there may even be billions of them. And the great majority of them have laws of physics which are not compatible with, for example, us. The anthropic principle states we have to be in the kind of universe which is capable of giving rise to us. So there's a kind of, already there you can see a kind of Darwinism going on. The fact that we are here and aware of our existence automatically selects for the fact that we have to be in the kind of universe that can give rise to us, which has physical laws which are capable of giving rise to galaxies and stars and chemistry and so on. Now, Smolin has taken that idea a bit further and made it more strongly Darwinian by suggesting that it is not just a vast population of universes, a small minority of which are compatible with us, but by suggesting that there's a kind of biological reproduction of universes. Universes give birth, in Smolin's view, to baby universes, to daughter universes in black holes. So it's possible to say of a universe, this is its parent, and that's its grandparent, and that's its great-grandparent. You can have a descent, a pedigree of universes. And as in biology, each generation there's the opportunity for a mutation to occur, in this case a mutation in the laws of physics. And so a daughter universe has almost the same laws of physics as its mother, but not quite. So there we have the idea of a kind of genetics of universes, a heredity of laws of physics and constants of physics. Darwinism comes into it now because since black holes are the birth event for a universe, some universes, because of their laws of physics, are better at giving birth, better at making black holes that give birth than others. And so universes evolve to become better at giving birth to baby universes. And coincidentally, the characteristics which make a universe good at giving birth to baby universes also happen to be the same characteristics that give rise to galaxies and stars and chemistry and life. So that the multiverse has evolved to become more and more likely to give birth to the kind of universe that can give birth to us. That's my biologist's account of the Smolin theory. I hope I've done it justice.
So there is selection there.
On his view, yes, there is a kind of selection. It's not selection for life. It's selection for those properties of physics, those the laws and constants of physics, which incidentally produce life as a byproduct.
So it's kind of reproducibility, but it's still not strictly Darwinian if there's not any selection beyond.
Oh no, it is Darwinian because there is selection to become better at making baby universes, which is like biological selection. I don't think actually many physicists buy it, to be fair.
Just having a look up there, over there. Okay.
We can't see, we're dazzled.
Oh, yes, there's a whole extra tier of you up there. Oh, my goodness. Have you got a microphone up there? Excellent.
You said regarding religion, people who study the Trinity, any belief about a deity is based on an assumption, which is true. Seems true, but is the fundamentals of science not all based on an assumption? The assumption that there are things and stuff called matter?
Well, I think the difference is that in science, those fundamental assumptions are testable. I mean, the most basic part of physics is quantum theory, which is deeply mysterious and deeply difficult to understand. But it does make stunningly accurate predictions. So it may be every bit as actually a lot more mysterious than anything theologians have ever dreamed up. But when you derive mathematically predictions from quantum theory, those predictions are verified to the umpteenth significant figure. It's been calculated that it's equivalent to predicting the width of North America to an accuracy of the width of one human hair. That's the accuracy with which quantum theory's predictions have been verified. And the predictions of the Trinity or transubstantiation are zero. They're just made up. They're just invented. They're no more valid than predictions of fairyology or leprechaunology or anything like that.
To predictions, but what about the initial assumption, which there is an initial assumption in both cases?
But it works. I mean, the whole of science is based upon initial assumptions, and science actually makes predictions which work. So to that extent, those assumptions are validated.
You do actually mention in your book one of the particularly testing questions that was asked of prospective students at Oxford, whether they were sure they were in a dream or not. And I think this kind of plays into the same kind of idea.
Actually, yes. I mean, I think that question was perhaps first asked by Descartes. How do you know you're not dreaming? It's an interesting question, and it's one of the questions which there is, as Alice says, there's a chapter, there's a section on the sorts of questions that we ask prospective students coming into Oxford, and that's one of the ones that a philosopher colleague of mine asked. Yeah.
Let's have another question. There's another one up in the gallery up there. There's I think a gentleman. I'm very sorry if you're not a gentleman.
Hello.
Hello. I hope you are.
Professor Dawkins, I had a conversation with my father-in-law, who is very religious, and he claimed he'd seen you on YouTube, I know it's social media and everything, saying that if you were provided with empirical evidence for the existence of God, you would still not believe it. And I'd said, no, I don't think he said that. So I said, I'm going to see him soon, so
Well,
I'll So I'm really glad I got the opportunity
well,
to
actually,
ask you.
I think this is a very interesting and difficult question. For years, I've said, of course, if I'm provided with empirical evidence, I would believe instantly. And the kind of thing I had in mind was the clouds part asunder, and a great chariot appears, and a deep, booming, sort of Paul Robeson voice says, "I exist." And I would, of course, instantly be converted. But your father-in-law is right that I have hesitated a bit about that, because really it comes back to the question Alice just raised. How do I know I'm not dreaming? How do I know I haven't gone insane? How do I know I'm not the victim of a conjuring trick by some very clever alien Penn and Teller, or Derren Brown? And I now am actually verging on departing from scientific orthodoxy and saying I find it very hard to imagine anything that would actually convince me, not just about God, but of anything supernatural. Because what is supernatural? What would you even mean by supernatural, other than something that we don't yet understand with existing science?
No, and not even that we don't understand, but that we're unable to detect, presumably.
Well, I mean, I think if some miracle were performed, and one were asked to say, because of this miracle, I now believe in the supernatural. Have you seen Derren Brown doing a trick? Have you seen Penn and Teller? Have you seen the amazing Randy? I mean, what these people do is supernatural, except that we know it isn't, because we know they are professional conjurers. But I find it very hard to convince myself that it's not supernatural. It's only the fact that they tell me, and that I sort of understand how clever conjurers are. You know, Hume's criterion for miracle, you should only accept a miracle if it would be even more of a miracle, that it should prove to be a fake, a hoax, a trick, a hallucination, or something like that. Isn't it always going to be a more plausible explanation that it's a hoax, a fake, a mistake, a trick, a hallucination, than that the laws of physics have been broken? And seeing how clever conjurers are, that shakes my confidence in my ability to say, okay, now I'm convinced, I believe it. I'm kind of backtracking from that scientific orthodoxy.
It sounds like a challenge to me. It sounds like you're throwing down the gauntlet, actually, Richard,
Yes,
to all those
sort of.
conjurers out there to try and convert you.
Yes.
Yeah. I think we've got time for one final question. And I think it's that gentleman there. He just put his hand up very quickly.
So I'd like to ask about like creativity and I guess like the eureka moment. So can you apply Darwinism to essentially like the birth of the intangible? So like that eureka moment, if you say, oh, I live a great life, etc., am I going to produce better ideas? That kind of thing, because we don't really understand where that spark comes from yet. I think you could compare it to magical, but...
Well, yes. I mean, I think it's true that that science does depend on eureka moments, on brilliant ideas, flashes of insight, and nobody quite knows where they come from. And then, of course, you have to test them, and that's what distinguishes science, is that you then test them exhaustively and rigorously. But the actual eureka moment itself, I suppose, as a naturalist, as a materialist, I would say that some random event in the nervous system juxtaposes something, perhaps two ideas in the brain that come together to form the new insight. And I don't think we need to get mystical about it. I mean, I think it's perfectly ultimately explicable by brain science, but it is a very important part of science, the imaginative hypothesis, which then has to be tested.
And on the idea of testing imaginative hypotheses, we're going to bring this evening to a close. I'd like to thank very much the Royal Institution for hosting us here tonight in this wonderful lecture theatre that Richard is so familiar with. And I'd like to thank you all for coming tonight. And last but not least, thank you very much, Richard Dawkins.